There are stories that live on the fringes of accepted history, whispered in online forums and supercharged by viral videos. They're tales of impossible connections, lost tribes, and secret histories that challenge everything we thought we knew. Today, we're looking into one of the most captivating of them all. What if the roots of ancient China, one of the world's oldest and most influential civilizations, didn't start in the Yellow River Valley? What if they stretched thousands of miles across continents, all the way to West Africa? This is the core of a theory that has lit up the internet. The story of the Chongai, Nigeria's so-called Chinese tribe. A viral theory is spreading online about a Chinese tribe living in Nigeria. The name associated with them is the Chongai. The claim is startling that a small group of people in central Nigeria are the direct descendants of the Shang dynasty, an ancient Chinese dynasty that ruled thousands of years ago. Proponents point to their faces, their language, and their culture as living proof of an African origin for one of Asia's greatest empires. Is it possible that an ancient Chinese dynasty left a forgotten legacy in West Africa? Is this a massive historical cover-up, or just a modern myth born from coincidence? The real story is far more complex and revealing than you might think. Let's investigate the clues and uncover the truth. The visual puzzle. A striking resemblance. The journey into the Chongai mystery almost always begins with a single, powerful observation: the faces. Proponents of the theory highlight that among certain ethnic groups in Nigeria, some individuals have features that seem reminiscent of East Asians: almond-shaped eyes, high cheekbones, and epicanthic folds. This observation led to the informal nickname Chongai, a term used in some online videos and articles that hints at a Chinese look. It's not an official ethnic identifier, but an informal label, often used to refer to a collection of distinct groups in southern Kaduna and Plateau State, such as the Hiam, and particularly the Shanga people. Photos are often shared online, placing members of these Nigerian communities side by side with images of ancient Shang dynasty figures or modern East Asians. For believers, this isn't a trick of the light or a simple coincidence. It's Exhibit A. They argue these physical traits are a genetic inheritance, a whisper of a forgotten ancestry. The theory suggests that in a time before recorded history, a group of Proto-Africans migrated east, eventually settling in the Yellow River Valley and laying the groundwork for what would become the Shang dynasty, which ruled for about 550 years from around 1600 to 1046 BCE. After the Shang were overthrown, the theory goes some of these African founders were displaced, and their descendants who remained in Africa, the Shanga, the Hiam, and others, preserved not just the culture, but the very face of their ancient ancestors. It's a powerful visual argument that demands a closer look. The linguistic clues. Echoes of a lost language? If the visual evidence is the hook, the linguistic clues are presented as the theory's intellectual bedrock. Proponents argue that if a Nigerian people founded a Chinese dynasty, then echoes of their original language should be found in modern Mandarin and vice versa, and they claim to have found them. The focus narrows to specific Nigerian languages, primarily those spoken by the peoples sometimes labelled Chongai. Online videos present word lists comparing vocabulary from languages like Shanga with Mandarin Chinese. Words for basic concepts can appear surprisingly similar. Beyond individual words, supporters point to the structure of the languages. Both Hiam and many Sinitic languages like Mandarin are tonal. This means the pitch at which a word is said can completely change its meaning. For example, in Mandarin, the syllable amar can mean mother, horse, or hemp, depending on the tone. Many Nigerian languages, including Igbo and Yoruba, are also tonal, a feature shared with Hiam. This is presented as a major clue, suggesting a deep structural link. The name of the tribe itself is seen as a cornerstone of this linguistic evidence. Proponents find the similarity between the Shanga people of northwestern Nigeria and the Shang dynasty to be incredible. They also point out that the nickname Chongai sounds a lot like Chang'an, a classical capital of ancient China. And then there's the name of the first archaeologically confirmed Shang capital, Anyang. Theorists note that in Nigeria, particularly among the Ibibio and Anang peoples, the name Ananyang is still a common personal and place name. To believers, this isn't just a random collection of similar sounds. They see it as a linguistic fossil record, preserving the memory of a transcontinental journey that mainstream history has forgotten, the cultural parallels and historical context. The final layer of evidence presented for the Chongai-Shang connection is cultural. The argument is that shared practices reveal a common origin. Proponents point to a deep reverence for elders and a strong emphasis on ancestor worship as a core value in both traditional Chinese society and many Nigerian cultures. The Shang dynasty itself is known for having a highly developed system of ancestor worship, believing that the spirits of their forefathers could communicate with the supreme god, Shangti. Forms of this practice remain significant in many spiritual traditions across Nigeria. Proponents also highlight advanced bronze working. The Shang dynasty is famous for its mastery of bronze casting, creating intricate ritual vessels that are masterpieces of ancient art. Meanwhile, West Africa has its own ancient and celebrated history of metalwork, including the famous bronze heads of Ife and Benin. While these appeared much later than the Shang, proponents suggest this shared skill points to a common root of metallurgical knowledge. To make this incredible migration story seem more plausible, it's often framed within the scientifically accepted out-of-Africa theory. The narrative suggests that if all modern humans originated in Africa, it's not a stretch to believe that later migrations from Africa helped shape civilizations across the globe. Some even cite genetic research by Chinese scientists like Professor Jin Li, which confirmed that the Chinese people, like all humans, originated from early modern humans in East Africa. However, these claims are often stretched to imply a much more recent, specific migration that founded the Shang dynasty, an idea not supported by the original research. The argument is presented as a puzzle. You have people in Nigeria who some say look East Asian. Their languages appear to share words and tonal structures with Chinese. Their cultures seem to prioritize ancestor worship, just like the Shang, and the name of the Shanga people is nearly identical to the Shang dynasty. When you put all these pieces together, the conclusion seems inescapable to some. The Chongai are indeed the remnant of a glorious African expedition that founded China. It's an incredible story, with pieces that seem to fit together perfectly. But is it true? We've laid out the evidence for the theory. Now we need to look at what mainstream historians, linguists and geneticists have to say. The answer might surprise you. Before we get into the scientific analysis, if you're enjoying this investigation, take a moment to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our future deep dives. The scholarly perspective, deconstructing the myth. This is the turning point. The story of a Nigerian tribe founding a Chinese dynasty is compelling, but it stands almost entirely on phonetic similarities and anecdotal observations. When we turn to peer-reviewed science, linguistics, genetics, and archaeology, a very different picture emerges. Let's start with the languages. The claim of a connection between Shanga/Hayam and Mandarin is rejected by mainstream linguistics. While they may share some similar-sounding words, this is not proof of a common origin. Languages across the world have false cognates, words that sound alike by pure chance. The Mandarin and Shanga words cited as evidence fall into this category. More importantly, these languages belong to completely different language families. Shanga and Hayam are part of the vast Niger-Congo language family, which originated and evolved entirely within Africa. Mandarin Chinese belongs to the Sino-Tibetan language family, which developed in Asia. There is no provable genetic link between them. The fact that both can be tonal is also not proof of a connection. Tonal languages have evolved independently all over the world. Next is the genetic evidence, which is perhaps the most definitive counterpoint. To date, there are no DNA studies that support a specific, large-scale West African migration to China that resulted in the founding of the Shang dynasty. Modern genetic research shows that East Asian populations have their own deep ancestral roots in Asia. While all humanity shares an ancient African origin, the divergence between African and Eurasian populations happened tens of thousands of years ago, long before the Shang dynasty existed. Recent large-scale genomic studies in Nigeria have provided incredible detail on the country's genetic diversity. They show that while northern groups like the Hausa and Fulani have some genetic admixture from North Africa due to historical trade, most Nigerian groups are genetically West African. Another study focused on the Berom people of Plateau State. Another group, sometimes labeled Chongai, found their unique genetic signature suggests they migrated to their current location from East Africa about 1,500 to 2,000 years ago, making them distinct from their neighbours but providing no link to East Asia. In short, Nigeria's genetic story is one of deep and complex African history. So, what about the facial features? The almond-shaped eyes and other features are real, but they are not evidence of East Asian ancestry. These traits are a natural part of the wide spectrum of human genetic variation and appear in various populations around the world. The epicanthic fold, for instance, is also found in some African populations, like the San of southern Africa, and is not a reliable marker of recent cross-continental ancestry. The so-called Chongai look is a fascinating example of regional human diversity, not a sign of a lost Chinese bloodline. The social implications. Why does the myth persist? If the scientific evidence against the Chongai-Shang connection is so overwhelming, why is the theory not only surviving but thriving online? The answer lies in the power of a good story. In a world where African history has often been marginalized, stories of ancient African glory and global influence are incredibly appealing. The idea that a Nigerian tribe didn't just build a kingdom, but founded one of the great civilizations of Asia, is a powerful counter-narrative. It reclaims a sense of historical agency. However, this narrative comes at a cost. By labeling the Shanga, Hayam, and other groups as Nigerian Chinese, the myth risks erasing their unique and rich identities. These are distinct Nigerian ethnic groups, each with its own language, culture, and history that is worthy of study in its own right. The Chongai label, while perhaps started playfully, can overshadow their actual heritage with a sensational but unfounded story. The myth can also create confusion about the real modern relationship between Nigeria and China. Today, there is a significant population of Chinese expatriates in Nigeria involved in trade and infrastructure. Their presence is part of a complex contemporary story, completely separate from ancient history. Mixing a mythical past with the present can obscure the very real social and economic issues at play. The Chongai theory is a powerful case study for our modern information landscape. It shows how a few compelling visuals, some linguistic coincidences, and an emotionally resonant narrative can create a story that feels true, even when it isn't supported by evidence. It taps into a desire to uncover hidden knowledge and challenge the official story. So where does that leave us? Are the Chongai a lost Chinese tribe? Based on all the available scientific and historical evidence, the answer is no. The theory is a compelling piece of modern folklore, a fascinating example of how we search for patterns and create stories. The linguistic similarities are coincidental, the physical features are the result of natural human variation within Africa, and the cultural parallels are too broad to prove a direct link. The real story of the Shanga, the Hayam, and the many peoples of southern Kaduna and Plateau State is not a story of Chinese ancestry. It's a deeply African story. It is a tale of ancient migrations within Africa, of the rise and fall of great civilizations like the Nok, and of the incredible diversity of cultures that make up the nation of Nigeria. The Chongai nickname may have been born from a curious observation, but the people it refers to are proudly Nigerian, with a heritage that doesn't need a link to a foreign dynasty to be extraordinary. The Chongai-Shang myth encourages us to look closer and ask questions, but it also teaches a vital lesson. In our search for hidden truths, we must be careful not to create new myths that obscure the real and equally fascinating histories of the people involved. Their story doesn't need to be about ancient China to be incredible. What do you think is the most compelling part of this mystery? Is it the visual resemblance, the linguistic coincidences, or the way the myth has spread? Let us know in the comments, and for more explorations of hidden history, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.